welcome to another episode of Chronicles of War. I'm Alex, and today's episode is going to be a bit different than all my other ones. Now, in the past, when I've done an episode, it's typically covered been about either one event, one person, one battle, one ship. However, this time it's not going to be, and in fact, I'm pretty sure this is going to be the longest episode I've ever done, and quite possibly the longest episode I will ever do. Because, for context, my notes for this episode are 8 pages long, and I started working on this episode at 10 o'clock, and it's currently 1 in the morning. So, that'll tell you something. But anyway, today's episode, let's see from the title, is about the BV 18. The BV 18 are the 18 students that attended BVC, what is now BVU, back at some point in time, and then during World War II, these 18 would pay the ultimate sacrifice. And today's episode is going to be my Veterans Day episode, and this is going to be a way to remember the 18 of them. So to start with, we've got Paul Peterson. He was born April 2nd, 1916 in Pomeroy, Iowa. He attended BVC in 1933 and then left in 1935 to help run his father's store. Just before the war, he would enter the armed services and would train in California before being sent into the Pacific in February of 1942. On August 31st of 1943, he was in New Guinea with the 162nd Infantry. They'd been fighting the Japanese for weeks when a grenade exploded near his foxhole. He would order for his friends with him to retreat and would provide covering fire until he would be hit and ultimately killed. Clarence Four. Clarence Four was born February 11th, 1917 in Miami, Indiana. He attended BVC at the same time that Paul Peterson did. He also would end up joining the armed services just before the war. He started training in Texas before then moving to Ohio for training. And on July 29th of 1946, he would be sent to fly B-17s in Europe. On August 29th, his plane would crash into a mountain in Grenoble, France. Dick Brown. Dick Brown was born approximately 1920 in Afton, Iowa. He would attend BVC in 1938 and would study journalism. He left BVC in 1940 to join the Naval Air Corps and would train in Pensacola, Florida. In 1942, he would end up being sent back to Pensacola to be a flight instructor. Then later that year, he would be sent to Texas as well to also be a flight instructor there. He would be sent to the South Pacific in February of 1944. On July 7th, 1944, in a mission over the Tinian Islands, what happened on this mission is unknown, but what we do know is he would perish on this mission, and his cause of death would be listed as multiple extreme injuries. Bill Brinkman. Bill Brinkman was born January 10th of 1920 in Rolfe, Iowa. He would attend BVC in 1940 before enlisting in the Army Air Corps in the winter of 1941. In 1942, he trained at Geiger Field in Washington and would receive his wings and be commissioned as lieutenant in September. In April of 1943, he was sent overseas to fly with the 527th Bomb Squadron of the 8th Air Force. His first mission would be May 29th over France. June 11th would be his second mission, which was to bomb his submarine pens at Wilhelmshaven. Um, this was out of range of P 47s, meaning he had no fighter escort. He would depart late afternoon and plan to hit his target around 6 p.m. 8 miles away from his target, the Luftwaffe would attack. His plane would be hit head on by the German fighter, which would set his plane down. The co-pilot and navigator managed to parachute to safety. However, the plane would end up crashing in a field. Lloyd McCabe. Lloyd McCabe was born in approximately 1924 in Rapid City, South Dakota. He would later move to Lawrence, Iowa, and then attend BVC in 1941. He would be drafted in early 1943 and sent to Camp Roberts in California. He would train with the 145th Infantry Regiment of the 37th Infantry Division. In July of 1943, he would be sent to the South Pacific for the New Georgia campaign. Then he would be sent to Bougainville in November of 1943. This was the largest of the Solomon Islands. He would be stationed to Hill 700, and on March 8th of 1944, Japanese forces would attack Hill 700. Due to poor visibility, the fighting on Hill 700 was mostly close quarters combat. On March 9th at dawn, the U.S. would still hold the hill, and Lloyd's battalion would be told to launch a counterattack to stop the Japanese advance. By the end of the day, 29 Americans would be killed, including Lloyd. Eugene Butler. Eugene Butler was born approximately 1924 in Glenwood, Minnesota. He would move to Hartley, Iowa. His family would move to Hartley, Iowa in the 1930s, and he would attend BVC from 1942 to 1943. He entered service July 7th of 1943 and would be stationed in San Diego, California. 9 months later, he would ship overseas with the 36th Infantry Regiment of the 3rd Armored Division. He arrived in France in July of 1944. September 12th, 1944, they would cross the Rhine. April 11th of 1945, they would liberate the Dora Mitalabou concentration camp. On April 15th of 1944, they would be pinned down by Germans outside of Frensdorf. He would receive a shrapnel wound to the back from a rocket, and then would help bring a more wounded soldier back towards the friendly lines. After this, he would then go and attempt to bring his commanding officer back to the friendly lines as well. On the way to his CO, he would be hit in the shoulder. However, this wouldn't stop him, as he would successfully make it to his CO and bring him back to the friendly lines. However, after he got back, he would fall and not get back up. In 2003, he would then be posthumously awarded the Bronze Star for these actions. Dick Moses. Dick Moses was born approximately 1923 in Sheldon, Iowa. He enlisted in the Army Air Corps in July of 1942. And in March of 1943, he became a navigator for a B-24 Liberator with the 754th Bombardment Squadron of the 458th Heavy Bomb Group. He would ship out in January of 1944. In March of that year, he would go on his first mission over in Friedrichshafen, Germany. In the next month, he would fly 8 missions. On April 22nd of 1944, he would be preparing to go on his 11th mission. Their target was the marshalling yard outside of Hamm, Germany. They took off at 6:30 p.m. and just before 8 p.m., the bomb bay doors would open and their bombing run would begin. They would end up being attacked by German planes, but they would manage to complete the raid and head back to base. As they neared Norwich Air Base, explosions started to happen in the sky. The Germans had followed them back to their base. Dick's plane's wing would be hit and would be set ablaze. The plane would fall into a tailspin, which would crash, killing 6 of the 10 crew on impact. Dick would be buried in Plot A, Row 4, Grave 37, at the Cambridge American Cemetery in Cambridge, England. Dean Weatherman. Dean Weatherman was born in 1918 in Battle Creek, Iowa. He attended BVC in 1934 and then joined the Army in 1935. After getting out of the Army, he would join the Navy in 1938 and be stationed aboard the USS Langley. They would be off the coast of Cavite on retreat from the Philippines from the Japanese invasion. On February 27th of 1942, the Langley would be hit by 5 bombs. 600 men from the Langley would be rescued by the USS Pecos. However, it was then sunk by Japanese torpedoes hours later. We don't know whether Dean was killed during the initial bombing of the Langley or the torpedoing of the Pecos. However, we do know that it was February 27th, 1942. His name is on the tablets of the missing at the Manila American Cemetery in Manila, Philippines. Don Saxton. Don Saxton was born in 1922 in Scranton, Iowa. He attended BVC in 1940 and in February of 1941 enlisted with the Iowa National Guard. He volunteered for the 1st Ranger Battalion, and on November 8th of 1942 would land at Anzio with the 1st Infantry Division. Sorry, no. But he would be the first. And then, anyway, June of 1943, he would transfer to the 3rd Ranger Battalion. He would land at Gala on July 9th of 1943 in Sicily. On January 22nd of 1944, they would land at Anzio. On January 27th, he would be killed. 767 Rangers attacked Anzio. 6 of them would return. Gerald Holiday. Gerald Holiday was born in 1913 in Greenfield, Iowa. He would attend BVC from 1936 to 1937 and would join the Iowa National Guard in 1941. On May 1st of 1942, he would be sent overseas, and during Christmas of 1942, he would participate in Operation Torch with the 168th Infantry. In late November, they were given the order to take Mount Pantano in Italy. They were pinned down by Germans and cut off from their supplies while there. On December 2nd, they'd be pinned down by a German machine gun nest, and the only way for them to get out of the situation would be for one man to sacrifice himself in order to throw a grenade into the machine gun nest. Gerald volunteered. he managed to take out the machine gun nest. However, the machine gun nest also would take him out. He's buried at Plot H, Row 14, Grave 8 at the Sicily Rome American Cemetery in Nettuno, Italy. Vernon Nelson. Vernon Nelson was born in 1918 in Shaler, Iowa. He would attend BVC from 1936 to 1940 before joining the military and learning to pilot B-24 Liberators in Florida during the Christmas of 1942. In September of 1943, he was sent to a ship in the South Pacific. On December 28th of 1943, he would have the mission to protect surveillance planes over the Kwajalein Atoll. They would be attacked by Japanese Zeros. He would shoot down two of these faster planes before he himself would be shot down. His name is listed on the Tablets of the Missing in the National Memorial Cemetery of the Pacific in Honolulu, Hawaii. Del Thayer. Del Thayer was born approximately 1911 in Everly, Iowa. He attended BVC approximately from 1929 to 1933. He would join the Navy July 1st of 1942. He would be aboard the USS Savannah and in 1943 during March would hunt U-boats off the coast of Brazil. In July of that year, he would be sent to Italy to support the Sicily invasion. On September 11th of 1943, a bomb would hit the ammo room of the USS Savannah. During this explosion, Del would be killed. His name is on the tablet of the missing at the Sicily Rome American Cemetery in Nettuno, Italy. Harry Chame. Harry Chame was born in 1916 in Manson, Iowa. He would attend BVC from 1935 to 1936 and then would join the Navy in September of 1938. He would be stationed at Pearl Harbor at the submarine base there. However, he would then be transferred to the USS Liscome Bay after the attack on Pearl Harbor. He and his ship would help participate in the invasions of Making as well as Tarawa in 1943. On November 24th of that year, two torpedoes would hit the Liscome Bay. It would sink in 23 minutes. His name is on the tablets of the missing in Honolulu at the Honolulu Memorial in Honolulu, Hawaii. Bruce Heflin. Bruce Heflin was born in 1918 in Fonda, Iowa. He would attend BVC from 1937 to 1939. He would enlist in 1941 and would fly P-61 Black Widow, a P-61 Black Widow with the 425th Night Fighter Squadron after D-Day. On October 27th of 1944, his plane would crash while he was attempting to land outside of Prosness, France. This was due to blackout restrictions as well as it being cloudy. He's buried at Plot A, Row 20, Grave 63 at the Epinal American Seminary in Epinal, France. Don Jones. Don Jones was born in 1922 in Lake Claire, Iowa. He would attend BVC from 1939 to 1942. He would then enlist post-graduation and be sent overseas in 1945. On November 28th of that year, he would be a radio operator in a C-47. His plane would disappear. The wreckage of it was later found in 1966 in Malaysia. His name would be added to the Manila American Cemetery in the Philippines. these last three names on this list, I feel I've gained sort of a connection to them over the past year in some way. Starting with Phil Burtness. Phil Burtness was born in 1923 in Sioux Rapids, Iowa. He would attend BVC in 1940 and become an Army medic in 1943. From September of 1944, he would be sent to France near Metz. This would be with the 11th Infantry Regiment. In December, during the Battle of the Bulge, he would be 30 miles away from Bastogne. After Christmas, he would be injured and then be sent to a hospital in France. On February 8th of 1945, he would be killed near the Luxembourg border. He has a grave at Division F of the Lone Tree Cemetery in Sioux Rapids. In that same cemetery, I have a great-great-grandpa buried. As my family's from Sioux Rapids, and in fact, I just learned this, yesterday really, that my family knew his family, which I did not know until I was making this when I happened to mention it to my grandma. Our next person is Otto Betcher. Otto Betcher was born on January 4th of 1920, and he'd live in Storm Lake, Iowa. He attended BVC in 1939 and then would join the National Guard. He would be called into service February 10th of 1941 with the 168th Infantry Regiment. And then he would take place in Operation Torch. On November 8th of 1942, as a staff sergeant, he had the task of leading troops ashore in North Africa alongside British commandos. However, the currents as well as bad weather would cause their landing craft to land at the wrong place at the wrong time. While under heavy German fire, Otto Betcher would not make it to shore. 4 years later, his father would help build the new dormitories for veterans in the attic of Victory Hall. And last year, on Veterans Day, Edson Hall was renamed to Victory Edson Hall and then was dedicated to Otto, as well as all those that gave their lives during the World Wars. Otto Betcher has a grave at the Storm Lake Cemetery, and not even 10 rows away, I have another great-great-grandfather who's buried. And our final member of the BV-18, Darrell Lindsay. Darrell Lindsay was born December 30th, 1919, in Jefferson, Iowa. He attended BVC from 1939 to 1940 and would enlist in the Army Air Corps in January of 1942. By late 1942, he would be promoted to captain, and by September of 1943 would be made the commander of the 585th Bomb Squadron of the 9th Air Force. In early 1944, he would bomb targets at Point du Hoc. On August 9th, he would have the mission to bomb L'Isle Adam Bridge. However, when he was just about to the bridge, Germans would open fire on him, and the engine of his plane would be hit. This would then cause his plane to start falling out of formation. However, Darrell managed to maneuver his plane back into formation and successfully completed the mission to take out the bridge. However, he knew his plane was going down, so he ordered his crew to bail out while he kept the plane steady. Soon it was just him and the bombardier left, and the bombardier offered to lower the wheels of the plane so that Daryl could escape, as this would be the easiest way for the pilot to get out. However, Daryl knew that this would send the plane into a tailspin, ensuring that neither of them would be able to get out. After this, he would order the bombardier out, and just after the bombardier would jump out and pull his parachute, the engine would explode. This would cause the plane to crash in the town of St. Prix. And on May 30th of 1945, Daryl Lindsay would be posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor for these actions. And he was also the only B-26 crew member to receive this medal. In St. Prix, there is a memorial to him as well as the rest of the crew of the plane. And his name is on the wall of the Missing in Ardennes. He is on the wall of the missing in the Ardennes American Cemetery in Belgium. This past May, BV had a exhibit for the 80th anniversary of the end of the war in Europe. And I had the privilege and honor of reading Daryl's last letter home to his wife that he sent on August 8th, the day before he died. And that's BB-18. There's a quote that many people have said some variation of it, but what it says essentially is, you die twice. The first being the physical death, and the second being the last time someone says your name. Let us ensure that these 18 names are not forgotten. Paul Peterson, Clarence Vore, Dick Brown, Bill Brinkman, Lloyd McCable, Eugene Butler, Dick Moses, Dean Weatherman, Don Sexton, Gerald Holliday, Vernon Nelson, Del Thayer, Harry Chame, Bruce Heflin, Don Jones, Phil Burtness, Otto Betcher, and Daryl Lindsay. And let's ensure not only these 18 are not forgotten, but all veterans. Look into your local veterans and just say their names so that they may not be forgotten. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode. Quick announcement. There will not be an episode up next week, as next Tuesday is Veterans Day, and as such, there will be a special video that I will be uploading to the YouTube channel in place of a episode next week. So the next episode will be coming out, not next week, but the week after. It'll be in 2 weeks. Thank you all so much for tuning in, and if you need to find a way to access the YouTube channel itself, if you're listening onto this from the SoundCloud, you can either look it up by searching at Chronicles of War on YouTube, and then putting in one of the episodes afterwards, which I found is one of the best ways to do it. Or you can head to the official Chronicles of War Twitter account at ChroniclesOFF44, where I post updates, and I've got links to each of the episodes as they come out on YouTube on there. Again, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode, and please just share this episode. Share this episode so that the BB-18's names can be remembered by as many people as possible. So as many people as possible can hear their story and remember them. Again, just thank you so much for listening to this and listening to their stories. And I'll see you in the next episode.